If you've ever gone to a Wikipedia page's history, you might have noticed the same thing that I have, which is that it can get really overwhelming trying to read through all of the information on this page. So here's a couple tips that I've learned over time. The first step is to try to filter out any info that you don't need. So I would start by just looking at the most recent edit, which is at the top of the page, or the most recent few edits. And when I look at an edit, I just look at a few essential details on this line. If you ignore most of the line, but you start on the left and look at the time that an edit happened, this gives you a sense for whether multiple people were making edits back and forth at the same time, or whether this happened months ago and nobody's been able to check the article since then. It's a good idea for getting a sense of the flow of changes to an article. Then you can look at the editor. So if somebody's logged in, then they'll have their username here. You can click on it to get more info about a user. If they're not logged in, then there will be a temporary account identifier here, and that's how you know that either this is a user that prefers not to log in or forgot to log in this one time, or this might be their first edit, and so they are doing it from a temporary account. Then there's little markers that users apply to an edit. So if they decide that an edit is very small, usually it doesn't change the meaning of the article, or they're reverting obvious vandalism to an article, then they can mark it as a minor edit. And that's a sign that you shouldn't really have to click in to learn more about the edit because there's not much happening there. Then we get to the size, which I think is one of the most important features of an edit summary. This tells you whether mostly content was either removed or added and how much was changed. So it's purely just a decision about how many bytes of content have been added or removed from the article. It can be a little misleading if somebody is adding and removing a lot of stuff, then the size might work out to a very small number or 0 when really a lot has happened. But for most edits, I find that the size is a pretty helpful description of kind of what the main focus of an edit was. If you have a really big number in size, then you know a lot of change has happened. And then finally, the summary is very useful for deciding what to look into more. This is just a little description about the edit that the user has added. So when they decide to publish an edit and change a page, you're supposed to summarize what changes you made. And often users will say, hey, I focused on this one section and I added this type of content, or this edit is kind of small and it mostly focused on copy editing. Either way, the summary is a good place to start for deciding if you want to learn more about what was changed. And when you are ready to learn more, you start using the buttons along an edit's line to decide, do I want to compare this edit to other edits? Do I want to learn more about the person who made this edit? Or do I want to react to the edit? And so there's a few ways to do each thing. With comparing, you can compare to the current page. So if it was a very old edit, there might have been a ton of changes to the page that included what this edit changed and also all of the changes since then. But more importantly, you can use the previous button to compare the state of the page once somebody has made an edit to the page before they made that edit. And so you can see exactly what they changed and how that makes the page look afterwards. Then you can learn more about the editor themselves. So if they're a user, you can click on their user page to see whatever they wanted to write about themselves on that page and get a sense for who that person is and what they care about. You can also usually click on their talk page, which is a way for you to get in touch with the user and see who else has gotten in touch with them and what they've talked about. And you can look at their past contributions. And this lets you see what this editor has worked on. And you can see how often they're working on things and how recently they worked on things, and if they just started editing or if they've been editing for a while. All of those buttons help you get a sense for the motivations of a user and why they made the edit that they made. And so this can be helpful context. It can also be helpful to know how experienced the user is, which helps you understand why they made the choices that they did. Finally, there are two pretty significant buttons. There's the undo and thanks button here. And both let you react to an edit in a very simple way. It's kind of like a shortcut for doing more things. So with an undo button, you can try to undo a specific edit and revert the page back to where it was originally. And this will automatically create the changes for you and create a preset summary of the reversion that you did and where the edit was going back to. It's usually good to add your own additional description for why you do a reversion, especially when you're an editor on the other side and you've made this change and suddenly you see that somebody has undone your change. It can be very frustrating to get that message and a little hurtful and pretty confusing. So it's good to explain why you did what you did. And Wikipedia has some rules about continually undoing and redoing edits because they don't want to incentivize large disputes over edits. In general, if you start finding yourself undoing something and you feel like you can't connect to the other user, it's good to get into a discussion with them, perhaps on their talk page or the articles page, about your disagreement. The last button is quite different. It's the thanks button. And I made a video on this, but it's generally a really nice habit to get into when you see edits that you like, to thank the user who made them. And finally, there are multiple ways to approach any of the actions that are shown on this edit toolbar. So you can always talk to a user and thank them directly on their talk page, or thank all of the editors that have worked on a page. You can also undo an edit manually and undo just most of an edit while keeping the things that you think are useful. Or you can go to an edit that you think has a couple issues and help update those issues while keeping the rest of it. There are plenty of ways that you can react to an edit. The buttons just make it easy for experienced users to quickly do edits that they often find themselves doing that don't need a ton of thought for them to carry out. So those are the most important parts of any single edit. When you put it all together, a page's edit history can get quite convoluted. There's a lot of edits happening. There is a lot of different summaries and different styles of writing about why an edit happened the way it happened. And there are bots additionally that come in with their own edits, and they describe them in very automated ways. And all of this can be easy to read or hard to read, and there's just a lot of context that's missing usually when you start looking at a page's history and trying to put together all the edits to see how a page formed the way that it formed. So if you want to look at a sequence of edits in any more detail, there is one more way to compare different edits to each other, and that is to select two different edits to show the start and stop of the range of edits that you want to look at. And you can press Compare Revisions to see how a page has changed over a sequence of changes. And this is really useful, especially when one user has come in and made a lot of changes, or when you see that some disagreements have happened and a change is going back and forth, being added and removed, and you want to see, well, what did it look like at the start of this and what did it look like at the end? And there are a few more pieces of information on each line that I didn't cover. A lot of this is automatically added, like tags, and it can sometimes be useful for more context. And you can use it to say, hey, how's this editor made the change to the page? Did they use the visual editor, or did they look at the underlying source information for a page to make a more technical edit, perhaps? And you can also see, has this edit been reverted? Is this gone now? Some of these tags are more useful than others and more specific and accurate than others. Sometimes the tags are hard to add accurately for every situation, so the reverted tag might not show up even though a edit has functionally been reverted over time. That's the gist of how view history works. If you care about stewarding a certain page and making sure that it doesn't get vandalized and continually is improving, then it's a nice thing to be able to check up on the history of a page and see how recent changes have edited the current state of the page. No one page is one person's job to control. However, every page does need some caring editors to take care of the page and to help guide newcomers when they edit the page. So if you do want to steward a page in this way and take care of it, it's helpful to understand how this history page works and be able to easily, quickly read it. By now, I don't get overwhelmed when I read these pages because my eyes immediately follow the things I care about. So I'm first checking the time of an edit to see how recent it is and how many edits have happened recently since I last looked at a page. And then I'm looking at, well, who made these edits? Is it a wide range of people or not? And what's the size of these edits? Is someone adding a lot of content to really change the page in a big way? Are they deleting a lot of content, or are these more minor edits? And I look at the summary to see how the user has declared that their edits change the page. And if I want to know more, I'll click on any one of the edits to see how it actually changed the page. So you can look at the history of a page to see the dramas of editing or to see the nuances of how an article gets created over time. If this is something you care about, this is a great starting point, but it's also something that you don't really need to know about in order to edit Wikipedia. Either way, I hope that you find something interesting and get used to the interface. Good luck with your editing.